Hey, everybody. Welcome to the PC Perspective Podcast. This is episode 342, being recorded on, March 25th, 2015. I'm Ryan Shrout.
I'm Jeremy Hellstrom.
I'm Josh Walrath.
I'm Sebastian Peak.
Alan is out on a mancation with some Navy buddies doing things in New Orleans.
With some dudes.
I don't really. I didn't check his ticket. I didn't know if he was actually flying to New Orleans, but that's what he told me. So he's not here today, which means we can talk and make fun of him, and he'll never know. So
if
everybody
he comes back with any beads, then you'll know what he was up to.
Yeah,
he bought them at a novelty shop. If that's what happened. So let's be honest with each other here. I don't know. Stuff happened. We're gonna talk about computer hardware and whatnot. I feel like it's been a while since I've been on this podcast, but it's only been 1 week I've been missing, right? I think.
Yeah, but you missed.
I was
before.
off, off. Now I'm on again. Yeah. Okay, so
you were hot and cold. You were yes. You were no.
I was. Yeah, just like that song. So we record the show on Wednesday nights, 10 p.m. Eastern, 7 p.m. Pacific at pcper.com/live. And we do some fun stuff. We banter a little bit before and banter a little bit after. So if you're interested in that kind of bull crap, you can come hang out with us. And there's a chat room and you can talk with people. And if you need a friendly little reminder for this live event, you can go to pcper.com/subscribe. You get this webpage here. And all we do is ask for your name. Probably don't want to fill in Ryan Shrout. But I mean, you can. I don't really care, I guess, what your name is on here, because all we use this for is to send you notifications about live events we're going to do, like the podcast or any other special live events, which I will go ahead and tease you here. You do want to sign up for this mailing list, because next week, next Thursday, April 2nd, we are going to have a special live stream with our friends from the Intel SSD group. Isn't that interesting, Alan? Yes, it's very interesting. So we're going to have, there's going to be a product launch. We're going to have stuff to give away. It's going to be educational. You're going to learn things. You'll laugh. You'll cry. You'll probably mostly cry. But I think it will be pretty interesting. I think the technology that they're going to launch and showcase for people is going to be pretty awesome. And we will do that all here at pcper.com. So go to pcper.com/subscribe, sign up for that mailing list. And then it will always direct you to pcper.com/live, and it will, I think probably tomorrow or Friday, I'll send out an email to that group talking a little bit about the live stream that will happen on Thursday with Intel. It'll be our first one with them, so we're excited about that, and I think it'll be really cool. So look forward to that-ish, if you will. Let's talk about hardware. We're going to start with Sebastian and his fancy wood headphones. And look at the SilverStone FTO5, which is interesting for me to bring up because when you were here in Florence, we talked about the FTO5 quite a bit, recorded a video, and then we didn't publish it for like a week and a half or something like that, 2 weeks. So I feel like I'm kind of in deja vu land. But let's hear about the SilverStone FTO5, I guess.
It is silver.
Yep.
It's a square.
Yep.
And it's not made out of stone, so it's false marketing. I smell class action lawsuit.
Don't quote me in that one.
It's a high-tech fortress.
Yeah, these cases, like Silverstone does this 90-degree motherboard layout where they've got everything kind of turned sideways. And if you have the right components, it's really cool because everything will blow straight up and out the top of the case. I've had some comments that this looks like it'd be kind of a dust magnet because the top is totally open, and that's valid unless you leave your computer on all the time. These designs constantly pull air up from underneath, and there's a fan filter down there that's easy to remove. It's magnetic on this one, I believe, and it just pushes straight out at the top. But if you leave your computer off, any kind of dust in the room is just going to settle right through that top. There's no filter or anything on top, but you wouldn't really want it because that would impede airflow, and all your I/O and stuff is up there.
I've always wondered, so as a person that has animals throughout his house, the bottom air intake is becoming more and more common, right? Like, if you look at most cases that have bottom-mounted power supplies, their power supply fan, if nothing else, is drawing air in, right? And pushing it out that way. So, at this point, it's just kind of like, yeah, whatever. You're just going to have to clean out some fan filters and get used to that type of stuff. But that has been the cornerstone to SilverStone, to many of SilverStone's case designs, I'd say, in the last
they keep on leaving it and then coming back to it. Like the Fortress back with the second one was almost exactly this case. This literally looks like somebody chopped a third off of the FTO2.
Huh, okay.
And then with the 3, they went with a completely different design. With the 4, they changed it around again. 4, I think, was a conventional layout. 3 was like inverted. And now with this one, they're back to the 90-degree thing. And it literally matches the inside of the Raven. The new Raven 5, the RVO 5, is exactly the same as this case internally.
Okay.
So using that same chassis, you get all the same stuff as the Raven. It's just noise dampening. It has been added to it, and you're dealing with aluminum front plate, steel side panels, a lot more metal. It's heavier. But
do you think that the noise dampening stuff did anything? Does it actually does it make the case quieter, or do you think there's other parts that are making the case quieter, like less fan intake area or something like that?
I would say the noise dampening helped a little bit. I think it helped for probably like 1 or 2 of the decibels. This was about 3 decibels quieter.
Oh, it was.
When I tested it with all the same equipment here in the same room. The Raven's really loud though. It's 50 decibels or so at full blast. Like if you have the 2 bottom mounted fans on the high position.
Is it are they the same fans on the FTO5? So these down here. Okay.
Yep. The same, they call them their air penetrator fans. The same one they've been using for a few years now. They get pretty loud at load. You'd almost never need to use it though, because what I found was low versus high, you're talking a degree or 2. It's well worth the noise savings to leave them down, because you get all the way down to like 35, 36 decibels with them at low, and you're shooting up to 50 at high. Now in this case, they're only 47 at high and like 35 on the low setting. So a little bit quieter than the Raven. If you flip back and forth between this and the Raven review I did, you can see in every case, this is maybe 1 or 2 degrees warmer with the same components and about 2 to 3 decibels quieter.
Interesting.
So it's almost a fair trade-off. It's like, yeah, it's a degree or 2 warmer, but it is quieter. It's interesting. Like I used a worst case scenario with the video card you see there.
Yeah, I was going to ask you about that.
Because it's dumping a ton of hot air into the case. It's not a blower style fan. That's the MSI Lightning R9290X. The fins, a commenter correctly pointed this out. Like the fins on this are running the wrong way for the cooling system.
So it's perpendicular to the expected airflow.
Right. And so the bottom fan, which was pushing a lot of cool air right up across the video card, was just hitting that first fin and kind of going around it. It did help push some of the hot air from around the inside of the case, but
yeah, I mean, ideally, like you've got these 2 fans, they're blowing straight down onto the heatsink. It's kind of just expelling air kind of into this area here, and I'm sure that fan moves some of that up and out, but it would seem to be
almost
more.
Looks like ducting would be a good idea in this thing.
It might be. I think like a blower style GPU fan makes more sense here, right? Because it would be expelling heat out. You're drawing it up. It's with a natural. As I'm told, it works with the natural tendencies of heat going up, but
convection or something.
I don't know, science
or
crap.
Whatever the word is.
Yeah.
I remember I had a FTO2 a few years ago, and I was playing around with overclocking 5870s.
Yeah.
I had a pair of 5870s at 1 gigahertz, and I don't remember what voltage I was running, but I had them in that case with the fans on high, and they were at reasonable temperatures. I just remember being impressed by this particular case. If you're using blower style, and those were the stock coolers on those video cards.
Right.
And then I was using a Noctua cooler and I'd specifically positioned it so it was also blowing up, and the fans were assisting with the CPU cooling, which actually helped a few degrees. And even with my Corsair H75 cooler in this thing, it was noticeably cooler with the fans versus without in this case.
Interesting. Yeah, I can see that here. You see the fan temperatures are lower with high fans versus low fans, right?
Yeah, so it does help. Like if you're just trying to squeeze the most you can out of coolers you already have, or out of blower style video cards that tend to run hot, this will give you a little bit of a boost. I think the big question, kind of the question I was left with this review was, it looks really nice. It's got an interesting layout because of the 90-degree motherboard thing. But you can get that from the Raven, and the Raven's about $50 less.
How much will this run you, the FT05?
The one with the window there is $185 on Amazon.
Yeah,
the one without goes for like $175.
I guess this is an aluminum case cost issue. A lot of it is, right?
Yeah, it's like a hybrid case. There's steel and aluminum.
Okay.
I mean, so a little bit of it might be materials. I struggled with that part because if this was $149, I'd be like, yeah, this is really nice. That's kind of high still, but you can justify it with the build quality and with some of the little features. But once you go 160, 170, then 180, 185, it becomes pretty hard to justify.
Right. Yeah, that's fair. Well, there you go. I mean, if you're interested in this case, if you've not really looked into a 90-degree angled case, the FT05 is an interesting design. And when you had it here, I liked it. I liked the way the build quality felt, right, moving it around. And it looks, if you look at this last picture here, you can see the back of it. It seems like you can get a pretty nice and easy, clean design out of it.
Oh, yeah, it's very easy to build in.
Yeah. Cool. All right, up next, we're going to quickly mention Lee posted a review of a brand new EVGA power supply line, the SuperNOVA 550GS and 650GS gold-rated power supplies. Nothing too dramatic here. We're essentially looking at kind of a lower-cost series, but gold-rated. I think we're looking at $89 for the 550 and $99 for the 650-watt variant. Fully modular is what we're looking at here as well. Yep. So 80 plus.
And so if you scroll up there for a second, they've added a new feature. You know the eco-friendly, the fans don't spin up until it hits a predefined temperature, and then it slowly ramps up.
Okay.
Notice how they put that on the inside of the PSU.
Is that less useful then?
Well, it'd be nicer on the outside if you had to switch back and forth between the two modes than cracking the case open to reach inside.
You think you might?
I've seen that on the outside.
You think you might confuse it with the main power switch
on the outside?
I wonder why they did that.
I don't know.
I
really don't know.
You get a reasonable 5-year warranty with it. They actually turned out to be pretty good power supplies. Again, we were kind of launched this along with the release here, so it's all kind of new information to me. Man, I love the inside. Look at that. One giant cap.
That is a super cap.
You might say. And then some giant copper coils. How much that copper worth, Josh, you think?
At least 57 cents on the black market.
Tree fitty.
So they did get a silver award. Continuous output at 50C, no issues. Excellent assortment of fully modular cables. They're in the flat ribbon style, which I think looks nicer as well.
But not compatible with SuperNOVA.
What do you mean?
Their software.
The EVGA software called SuperNOVA that allows you to control it directly digitally.
Yep.
This SuperNOVA PSU is not compatible with it.
It's a bit of a branding issue.
Yeah, I could see that being a bit of an issue. On the other hand,
it's a GS as opposed to one of the X's, so it's lower cost. It has less features. Because $650 for under $100, not too bad.
Right. Yeah. There's just so many power supply options out there right now. It's definitely
really. Have you ever scrolled through Newegg and
confusing,
looked
crowded
at
process?
How many products and manufacturers there are?
The no-name power supplies.
I only buy cases that have power supplies that ship with them, so I don't really have this issue. I haven't had any. I haven't had a computer blow up in almost 9 months. Thank you very much.
That's not even true.
That's not actually true.
19 watts is enough for anyone.
I thought I killed one off a side tangent. I did think I killed a system like yesterday. My case sits on the floor next to the desk, underneath the desk, and I was plugging in a USB card reader. Thank you. And I happened to like right as the metal of the USB plug touched the metal of the USB port on the front of the case, I felt and heard a little bit of a spark, a little bit of a static shock, perhaps. System shut off immediately. Not like a blue screen, not like anything, just off. And it wouldn't, and like I turned it off.
You sat there silent for about 30 seconds.
Yeah. I sit there in silence with my mouth literally agape, staring at it, trying to think of how much stuff I was working on that I hadn't saved. Because I was working on a story. I was like, oh, I need this one last picture from this USB. Oh no. So I don't really know what the fix is for that, other than maybe like buying a humidifier, or also.
Well, what you do is you touch the external case before you plug in the USB.
Honestly, I thought I had done that. I had tried to make a habit of that. Of like.
Did you lick it?
Maybe. Maybe. I make a habit of kind of like reaching and touching things, like the legs of the table or whatever. I don't know. It was very discouraging. It turns out I didn't lose very much data, but you know, it's there. We're also going to quickly talk about the OCZ Vector 180. This is an SSD review that went up today. Alan posted. I don't have a little sample here, but it looks like an SSD. It is the next iteration in kind of OCZ's self-branded, self-built controllers. This is the is this the M00? I think it's the M00.
Yep.
Vector 180 is supposed to be part of their flagship line, up to 960 gigabyte capacities, which is an improvement for them over previous generation, like the Vertex 460 or the Arc 100 or whatever, using Toshiba 19 nanometer MLC flash, rated at 550 megabytes per second reads, 530 megabytes per second writes. Fairly good specifications looking at this table, endurance rated at 50 gigabytes per day, a 5-year warranty. And I think that Shield Plus means that it's kind of like advanced replacement. Like they send you a new one before, like they cross ship you SSD if you have to have an RMA, as opposed to sending yours away and waiting, which is a kind of a big deal. Like that's a good thing. And pricing is pretty good. I think the 960 gig, no, the 480 gig MSRP is $274.
And it's on sale at $270 from Amazon when I checked earlier today.
Okay, so it's already kind of a handful of dollars cheaper. So, I mean, there you go. That's what an SSD looks like. It looks like that. And if you like to see the insides of things, which who doesn't, that
sounded creepy.
It was supposed to. Indie Link's controller, Toshiba flash, etc., etc.
Look at the size of that cap.
This one right here?
It's not a super cap, but it's somewhat.
It's not the size, it's how you use it, Josh.
That's never more true than here. So a couple of quick things on performance. Like if you look at our HGTAC average results, you'll see things kind of in line with what you would expect in terms of previous Vector drives or previous OCZ drives, Samsung 850s, HG Tune results pretty much in tune with it. This is where like things get more complicated. If you look at the PC per file copy test, what's interesting here is a couple of things. The Vector 180 is actually fairly slow in comparison to these top three results, this kind of white bar, this red bar, and this green bar. And you'll notice that it actually gets slower as the drive gets bigger. So the 240 gig is like 38 seconds for this particular test. The 480 gig is 41 seconds, and then the 960 gig is 51 seconds. So you're actually seeing it degrade in performance over time, which is kind of backwards to what we're used to, where higher capacities usually mean more channels, usually mean faster performance. So that was kind of a first tip here. The file copy was fine, no issues there, but the file creation was more of the issue. Then if you look here at yapped results, you get some very kind of oddly, I don't know, like this again, the 960 has this huge drop down and kind of back up on sequential reads.
Is that because they went over the 3.5 gig limit?
Yeah, you're only allowed to have 3.5 gigs in a system.
Actually, that drop happened when Ryan was plugging in that USB drive.
Yeah, we did. I also had a couple of systems appear to me to randomly turn on today as well. So things have been going great here at the PC Perspective Testing Labs. Iometer stuff actually looked fairly normal. Actually looked pretty good for the Vector 180. Good all-around performance there. So there was, as I scroll down here through, has this got it? Let's see. No, we're just going to go ahead into this other page. So there is a caveat to this drive that we need to mention. And it kind of starts with this graph here. So this is a full run of HGTAC. And what you're looking at is this line across here that has all these like very regular
It's like your prison cell view.
Yeah, it does very much look like that, and it might even be causing moire effect on some of your screens as you look at this. But there's these very consistent drops down in performance where you can see like the average ends up being, or the should be around like 455 or something if you look at the top of this. But you get these drops down into like the 120s, 140s or something like that, and it's a very regular thing. Like this is the largest capacity, and as it turns out, those are about every 20 seconds. And it's not just seen in benchmarks, this kind of hitching, this kind of pausing. If you look here, Alan has included like disk transfer rates where you can see like you're doing some writes here and it suddenly drops to 0 and then it comes back. And this is, for a significant portion of that 60-second window that you see as well. And you can see that here too. You get these kind of drops, and they even show up in, if you're doing just standard Windows copies here, right, where he is, I guess, copying to the SSD. That's right, Ken? Yeah, it's on writes to the SSD. So there's a couple of weird issues. One is, this top issue is trim performance. So trim is anytime you delete a file from your SSD, trim is kind of responsible for cleaning up the metadata and making sure that the SSD knows that, hey, that flash data is cleared now, erase it, rearrange the table so that the next time we want to write data to it, you know that that is available and free. And that actually can cause some slowdowns, right? It's actually a slower process. For example, let me see what Alan actually wrote here. For example, like even just formatting a drive that was full can take upwards of like 4 minutes, which isn't a huge amount of time, but considering other SSDs tend to happen in like 4 seconds or 10 seconds, that was a very different thing. It kind of started this chain of let's discover what it is that we're looking at. I'll just read a little bit of what Alan wrote here. As you can see, the 480 gig Vector 180 stalls all operations once for 4 seconds, followed by another stall of just 10 seconds. The effect appears proportional to capacity. The 240 gig stalled for shorter periods, about roughly half, while the 960 easily went past the 10-second mark during this particular test. And we get a similar kind of write hitching as well. And the answer from OCZ on this, because to be honest with you, like we knew about this result for at least a couple of weeks, and we sent them back some feedback, and they gave us another firmware, and we sent them back some feedback, and they say that it is a characteristic of the design of the drive itself, and is a result of the firmware performing updates to its metadata mapping table and flushing the entire table out of DRAM into NAND flash, during which I/O throughput is impacted for very, very brief periods. And they basically say that this observable in larger drives where there's more metadata. It is observable in synthetic benchmarks, but there's virtually no impact to typical client-grade end-user applications and during real-world use. And there's definitely some truth to that opinion on it, to that viewpoint of it. But there are some instances where that's not true. Like if you have, maybe you've downloaded some movies to your SSD. Right, and maybe they're, I don't know, how big are Blu-ray rips now? 4 gigs, something like that. Is that a reasonable thing?
Probably a little bigger. I don't know.
A little bit bigger than that, 6 gigs, something like that. So maybe you move that to your SSD, but now you want to move it to your external drive. So a move is actually a copy and then a delete. So once it deletes a 6 gigabyte file, there would be some period of time where your system would no longer be able to function in terms of writes to the drive. Maybe that's 10 seconds, maybe it's 15 seconds, depending on the capacity of your drive. It doesn't halt the system completely. It does not locks up the system, but any other write, if you were doing something else that required a write to the SSD, it would be paused. And if that is something the operating system was trying to do, then you would kind of have this hitch and stall out on the operating system itself. Another instance would be, don't
do like Fraps video capture or shadow play on this drive.
Yeah, right.
Because writes,
and with the write hitching, it doesn't have to be at full speed. He said at about 150 megs per second or something like that, you could catch it doing this. So if you were copying stuff, maybe you have a USB 3 drive that has a bunch of game backups on it, so you don't have to re-download from Steam all the time. If you were copying one back to the SSD, you were writing it to the SSD, you would see what Alan showed here on this file copy, where you would see this these dips in performance, right? And it actually did show up in our synthetics as well as our real world. Like there's nothing more real world than just copying a file to an SSD, right? And so it's because of those oddities that Alan just does not recommend this drive right now. We think they have the capability to fix this and with firmware changes, but it's very odd if it is something where they're clearing metadata off of a cache because of trim commands. Every other SSD has to do those functions, but they are either doing it in an unsafe manner that could potentially like damage your data if power was pulled during that operation, and OCC is doing it the incredibly safe way, or they were just smarter about how they implemented it and they made it kind of invisible to the user. It doesn't actually halt all host write functionality to the system. So even though performance is reasonable, the controller seems fine. You can get a 960 gig drive for roughly $500. 52 cents per gig is kind of where that goes down to, which is okay. It's not fantastic pricing. It's more of flagship SSD pricing, like kind of like 850 Pro level type pricing, maybe 850. Is there a regular 850?
850 Evo and 850 Pro.
Okay, right. There's no regular. There's no just 850.
Evos would be the.
So it would be one thing if this drive were a budget drive and it says, hey, there's this performance oddity. You'll sometimes see it, you'll sometimes not. But hey, it's 35 cents per gig. Whereas here it's, if you buy the 240 gig, it's 62 cents per gig, right? So it seems a little, it's just not a recommended product at this point, to put it bluntly, right? It's just not something we recommend people go out there and buy with all the other SSD options that are on the market. So I don't know.
Alan's you heard it here first.
You heard it here. I don't know.
Yeah, not only that, but I read a review from another place, and they never covered that.
Nope.
Crazy.
Well, the thing is if you look at the synthetics, like if you only read the average result at the end, you just think it's like, well, it's like 5% slower than I expected it to be, because those write speed hitches every 20 seconds are, they last about 1 second, so you get about 20% less performance. Right, so
what I find funny is that this is exactly pretty much the exact same internals as the ARC 100 or the Radeon R7.
Yeah,
same controller, same flash, same bloody drive. Those Alan didn't see that on when he reviewed them.
So as it turns out, he might have seen them, but
we didn't recognize it.
Based on the controller performance, you didn't notice them as much. Like the HD TAC kind of dips that we saw were much shallower, and in file copies it was much shallower, and it kind of was maybe more in the noise. But it seems like that may exist on other ones, but to a lesser extent, based on kind of just the controller integration. So
it seems that this power failure functionality is magnifying this effect.
Yeah, maybe. I think it might be. The PFM Plus, is that what you're talking about?
Correct.
It's possible that that's what it is, right? And there could be,
because every once in a while it flushes that that mapping.
Yeah, the metadata map stuff.
Yeah, to flash so that it's recoverable and.
Correct, and you want to do that. I understand it, and there may be if they had come out and said, "Look, everybody else is doing it wrong, and we're doing it right because it's the safest way to make sure you never lose data in the event of a power loss during one of these metadata flushes," but they aren't saying that. They're just saying, "Well, this is the architecture we built," and you kind of go, "Well, okay, nobody else really built an architecture like that," and had everybody else's functions been kind of flawed from the beginning, I think we would have seen more reports of hey, the system, the power, we had a blackout and my SSD was corrupted, right? I think we would see more of that on there if there was some kind of fundamental difference to that degree. But wait for Alan to get back and maybe we'll talk about more stuff.
Well, all right.
Maybe not. Maybe not. I don't really
He's at a place with a lot of different type of scotches, so we may not hear from. Yeah, but he doesn't really drink.
Yeah, no. Here's what he's gonna do. He's gonna take pictures of it so he can brag about it on Facebook, and then he'll never touch it. He'll never touch it.
He'll drink a Fanta, hang out with his friends, but be on his phone the entire time.
Yep.
He already did. Oh, he already did this.
Yeah.
Oh, he already posted it to Facebook to brag about it, and he'll never touch it. I told Ken, I want to see a picture of Alan holding a hand grenade on Barefoot Street, knowing that it was his friends that he borrowed for the photo. That's what I want to know. I want to see that. I don't know. Anyway, moving on, Dell XPS 13 review. I've talked about it a couple of times before on the podcast. It was my pick of the week, I believe, sometime previous. It's a pretty good laptop, guys. It's pretty good. It's a 13.3-inch screen and an 11-inch body, just like Josh.
Uh-huh.
And it has its most important. I get this. This is all format, so it's not going to show anything. I'll just use the pictures. It has look how small the bezel is around the edge of that screen, right? Now the model we got sent
so small.
The model we got sent was a 1080p IPS 13.3-inch screen. There's another option that is the same size, but it's 3200 by 1800. It is a touch screen. The one I have is not a touch screen. And the touchscreen one is also has a glossy screen, and clearly you can see this one has a nice matte finish, which I definitely prefer.
It's really a 4K? I thought it was 25.
It's 3200 by 1800, which is not 4K.
Yeah, it's not 4K, but
Quad
it's
HD, not UHD.
Yeah, Quad HD Plus, I think they call it.
Yeah.
So what's interesting about that, just right off the bat, is so you can get a little bit faster processor. You can get 8 gigs of memory instead of 4 gigs of memory, which is what ours came with. You can get 256 and 512 gig SSDs that ours ship with a 128. But the screen difference is more important than just your screen preference, right? So the non-touchscreen variant that I have is lighter by about 0.2 of a pound, and it has the matte finish instead of the high gloss finish, which I definitely prefer. I'm sure there are other people that see otherwise. The high gloss screens definitely have better color. They tend to pop more, but I'm willing to sacrifice that. And it also is way more intense on your battery life. As it turns out, pushing 3200 by 1800 versus pushing 1920 by 1080 from the GPU actually has a significant impact on how long you can actually use the device, because they both have the same batteries.
That's shocking.
It was shocking to me
that it takes more energy to do more work.
Correct, but I was surprised how much more. I think it was a non-tech that did an idle test, with both screens. They got both models because they're specialer than us, but they got both models, and I think they rated the 1080p version as having 5 to 6 hours more battery life than the higher resolution screen, which is insane, right? First of all, nobody uses a laptop in that style, right? Idle on a dim screen, whatever. But it was enough for me to know that I would definitely want the 1080p variant rather than the high res variant. The rest of the machine's nice. It's got a fairly thin design, 2.6 pounds. It's got this nice kind of aluminum finish on the top and the bottom. The insides is all kind of like a black rubberized plastic. You get 2 USB 3.0 ports, a full-size SD card slot, 1 mini DisplayPort output. Here you can get a little close-up of how thin that bezel is. They call it the Infinity Display. Actually, I think they only call the 3200 by 1800 variant the Infinity Display, but it's still pretty. It's damn nice looking. One of the downsides of a super thin bezel on the top is you get this webcam in the bottom left-hand corner of the screen.
Looking up your nose.
That's not a good idea.
So it looks up your nose a little bit, and your hands are never not in the shot, right? If your hands are on the keyboard, they're never not in the shot.
Well, you shouldn't be using your computer while you're Skyping with your significant
Maybe
other.
you shouldn't. Maybe that's true. But maybe I'm not going to get into it. So that's kind of... Remember how we were talking about the Dell Venue 8 7000?
I was going to say, this is consistent from Dell. Put things down.
The front-facing camera is in the bottom left-hand corner of the screen.
Yeah. Put your cameras in
the crotch shot.
Make a great device. Put your cameras in the worst position ever.
But you're right, Sebastian. The Dell Venue 8 7000 had super thin bezels along the top left and right, and then the bottom had a long bezel, a wide bezel with a camera and a poorly placed
It's like
location.
Dell's figuring out why no one makes super thin bezels on portable devices that need cameras.
I think this sacrifice is worth it, though, because
the webcam is unusable.
It's not unusable.
It might as well not have one.
No, that's incorrect. It's not unusable. It's just dumb looking.
They should make a really crappy webcam just so they can do checkboxes.
Yeah, this computer just shouldn't have a webcam then.
I would be fine with that too, but I think most...
You can't ship a laptop in 2015 without a webcam.
Well, don't ship it with a crappy one either.
Well, but you can check that box. It's like it has a 720p webcam.
Correct.
Yeah, but if that wasn't the concern, like if this was a no compromise computer, they shouldn't have tried to shove a webcam into it.
But look at the bezel. Stop looking at the webcam. Look at that. Look how thin the bezel is.
Did you use the picture compared to my MacBook? It makes me cry a little bit.
I will show that in a second.
Actually, it makes me cry a lot.
I will show that in a second.
Okay.
The keyboard is good, but it's a thin device, so you're going to have less key travel than what I'm used to coming from one of those big fat Lenovo ThinkPads that I've got. But actually, I used it for a good couple of weeks as my almost primary machine, and I was able to type most of this review on that device, and it was fine. It worked out pretty well. Display is great. Here's a shot that Ken is talking about. This is his MacBook Air. You have an 11-inch, right?
Yeah.
MacBook Air. So the
11-inch, the size of a 13, because of that giant bezel.
Right. Yeah. It's true. It's very true.
But my webcam points correctly.
Very good color reproduction on the XPS 13. Pretty reasonable brightness, considering it is a matte finish device. Very good viewing angles because it's an IPS display. Audio, it has stereo speakers, but they kind of point out the sides instead of out towards the viewer. So it's a little bit there, but it does get quite loud if you're interested in just blowing out the speakers early for some reason.
And often.
CPU performance is pretty much exactly in line with the Intel NUC based on Broadwell we saw before, right? So this is a Broadwell Core i5 5200U. That is kind of the default Ultrabook platform for Broadwell for new designs coming out. Performance, a little bit better than what you got with the 4200U, but not earth-shatteringly so in terms of CPU performance. You get better single-threaded performance because it does clock higher than Haswell did, so that's a plus. I never updated that graph. I need to do that. GPU performance is actually a better improvement than CPU performance. So if you want to do things like, I don't know, play some Bioshock Infinite 13x7 low, or Counter-Strike Go at 1080p high, or Grid 2 at 1080p low, you can do those. They're not fantastic. It's not a gaming laptop by any stretch, but if you have mainstream gaming titles you want to get through, you can do that. It has a reasonable performance SSD. Again, kind of disappointing write speeds, like 140 megs per second, but good read speeds. So that's really what you're concerned about for loading application times and whatnot. So battery life, here's where it's pretty cool. XPS 13, our battery life test is fairly harsh. It uses fairly high impact websites, and it cycles through them pretty quickly compared to some other ones that are maybe stretching it out longer just to make the battery life a little bit longer. What's important here is the comparison, though. The Dell XPS 13 got almost 8 hours. The Lenovo Yoga 3 Pro, which is also based on Broadwell, but the lower power Broadwell-Y variant, only got 5.5 hours because it has a smaller battery in its ultra-thin design.
And has a 32.
Did you take this apart by chance?
I did not, but I looked at iFixit take it apart.
Well, what size is the motherboard as compared to like the new MacBook Air?
It is bigger than that. It is for sure, because the MacBook Air is using Core M, or the new MacBook rather is Core M.
Yeah.
Right, and so is the Yoga 3 Pro. It's using Core M. This is full Core i5, so it's a little bit bigger because of that. I mean, it's larger. It is because it's got the SATA on there, and then it's got the memory soldered onto the PCB on the reverse side.
It's M.2, but yeah.
What did I say?
SATA.
Yeah, M.2. Yeah, not SATA. Why do you ask?
Soldered on, I bet too.
No,
because I'm just curious as to how big
I started
and
to
how
take
much
it
extra
apart.
battery they could put in there.
It's a 52 watt-hour battery, so it's a big battery, kind of right off the bat. I did start to take it apart, but the clips were not being nice to me, and turns out I didn't want to break it because I just looked. iFixit had done a teardown, so I said, okay, that's good enough for me. I'll use that for now. What else we got? Oh, recharge time. This is interesting, and we're adding this into notebook tests maybe going forward, is we test how long it takes to actually recharge the machine under a couple of different scenarios, whether it's idle, which is where the screen is at minimum brightness, but it's still on because we got to record what the charge levels are, and then doing our normal browsing test at 180 lux screen brightness. And I find it interesting. You can get to 90% battery life in 101 minutes on idle, or 116 minutes while doing like a typical browsing workload. So in under 2 hours, you can get 90% of your battery life back which is pretty cool actually.
So did this? What inspired you to do this? Your what Droid Turbo?
Yeah, so doing the Galaxy Note 4 review, I guess, kind of pointed me in this direction. Like, to me, that's becoming a more important thing, right? Is, okay, I used this all day, but I'm getting ready to get on a plane, so how long do I need to charge it to get, 5 hours out of it or something like that? And hence why we had like 50%, 90, 95, and 99% charge times. So I'm curious. People leave us feedback, give me ideas on what you think is interesting out of that. Because also I will say some other outlets publish times to 100%, which is entirely useless because going from 99 to 100% can oftentimes take 30 minutes or some obscene percentage of the total time. When that 1% is useless, it's just harder technically, technologically to get that
just like
last
an
little bit back in there.
download browser bar.
Yeah, it gets to 99% so quick.
It sits there.
And it just sits there. So yeah, any feedback on that would be good. In terms of pricing, the model we tested was $899, which is pretty good for what you get, I feel.
Now, is that the 4 GB RAM model?
4 gig, 128 gig SSD. For my money, if I were to buy one, which I'm seriously considering doing, I would buy this one with 8 gigs of RAM instead of 4 gigs and a 256 gig SSD instead of 4, and that's
which runs to 1100, right?
Yeah, $1099. So it's $100 for each of those upgrades.
What type of SSD is in that? I've not looked at the iFixit.
It's a Samsung PM851.
Okay, so it's M.2.
It's an M.2 SATA.
Okay.
Yeah, so it's okay. Like it's not anything special, but it gets the job done. It's like I said, it has fairly low write speeds, but 140 megs per second.
Those sound like compromises.
Yeah,
no compromises.
Did I say that?
I don't know.
I don't think
it was implied.
No, I think Sebastian Peak usually says no compromises. Just look at the accoutrements that he surrounds himself with.
It's true.
I make sure to put everything of value in frame so I look like I'm better off than I am.
So that's the Dell XPS 13. I really, really, really like this machine.
Also, if you put that external webcam on it, like everyone's saying, think of how much of the screen it's going to block because you have no bezel to put it on. It's going to block like...
This is not...
It's like a sixth of the screen you're blocking.
What are we talking about?
If you put an external webcam on that computer...
Everybody uses external webcams, right?
But you have to on this laptop because...
no one does.
Because the webcam sucks.
You don't have to use it. It just looks odd. It just looks stupid.
So if you buy this webcam...
It's usable.
You can't do the podcast remotely ever. Really, because the webcam is in a terrible position.
I just have to bring the laptop up, the keyboard up to eye level.
Yeah.
Instead. Right. Yes.
But I bring the C920 with me everywhere if I'm going to do something.
Yes, but if you put a C9
webcams suck.
But if you put a C920 on this laptop, it'll take up like a fifth of the screen. Because it has no bezel.
User, you're so bitter, aren't you?
Let me show this bezel again. Just be angry a little bit. Stop whining.
See, I feel like that picture doesn't even do it justice because you're seeing so little of the screen in relation to the bezel.
Yeah.
The bezel in person, at first, it almost looks bezel-less. And then you're like,
they just should have put enough bezel on the top to put a webcam.
Like this picture, then.
And I would have been all right with it. It will just fit the webcam on top.
Put as much bezel as they did on the Apple.
They can't fix it. They can't put it up there. They make the bezel bigger.
Yes,
look, we don't all want MacBook Airs.
Integrate
with 4-inch bezels
into the display.
Your MacBook Air has more bezel than this.
I know. I'm saying.
Hey, you know what I'm saying? My Logitech webcam.
Tracts of bezel.
Okay, my Logitech webcam in front of me is less than 1 centimeter of overlap. You're not going to block much out.
How big's your bezel?
Yeah, it doesn't sound like
bezel is a good
bezel.
2 centimeters.
So that's like 3 centimeters, bro.
This bezel is only 5.7 millimeters.
It's 1 centimeter.
Only
bezel
a Mac
is this
owner
big.
would argue about a centimeter.
But this is only 5.7 millimeters, which is less than centimeters.
So for the record, the bezel on my laptop is crap. But I think there's a compromise between where you can fit a webcam and that XPS.
So I've asked Lenovo today to
That's
send
all
me,
I'm saying.
Lenovo's going to send me the X1, the new X1 Carbon.
Ooh.
Right. So we'll get an idea there because we'll see where they put the webcam as well. So anyway, go check out that review. It's pretty neat.
They probably put the webcam on the back of the car.
It's weird. Yeah, the webcam is actually on the keyboard looking directly up your nose.
Straight up at you.
Right, yeah. It's not even an angle up your nose. It's actually directly up.
We have a market first crotch cam.
Right.
It's on the bottom of the...
bottom of the front of the thing.
We had to put an LED down there, too. It's weird.
Yeah, it's an LED light because you got to illuminate it because usually it's dark. Right? It's the chat roulette cam is what they call it.
Ooh.
Featuring cam horror acceleration from NVIDIA.
Have you guys ever heard about FreeSync? Does that ringing a bell with anybody?
Is that a song by some guy out of Texas?
Freebird?
Do you hold up your lighter when you hear FreeSync?
I do. I go to concerts and I yell at FreeSync, and people turn and go, "What the hell is wrong with that guy?" So FreeSync finally, like a public announced thing. There's a driver out for it. You could buy monitors, maybe not in the U.S. Actually, I think the BenQ you can buy in the U.S. I think at least a couple of them now are showing up in the U.S. And we got to use it. We got to use it and play around with it for a little bit. And the majority of our impressions are actually quite good about FreeSync, as it turns out. So FreeSync is the competitor to NVIDIA G-SYNC based on the VESA DisplayPort 1.2a Plus Adaptive Sync implementation, which is basically gives the driver developers from AMD or NVIDIA, if they chose to do it, a way to integrate VBlank extension, which allows you to have a variable refresh rate on a panel. Right. We've talked about G-SYNC a lot. We know what G-SYNC is, how it prevents tearing, how it prevents stutter, and why it's so awesome, right? And I truly believe that variable refresh displays are very important to the future of PC gaming and really change things in a lot of fundamental ways. So FreeSync has been delayed many times, finally available. I can't remember how many times they told me we would have it next month. We actually have it here. We have 3 monitors here, only 2 function, but we have 3 FreeSync monitors here. We have, let's see, we have let me go down to, it's another table. We have an LG 21:9 ultra wide, 2560 by 1080 screen. We have a BenQ TN 2560 by 1440, 40 to 144 hertz panel, so like very similar to the ROG Swift in implementation. And then that widescreen LG panel has a maximum refresh rate of 75 hertz, which is okay, but it actually has a minimum variable refresh of 48, which we'll talk about a little bit later. So I'm not going to go through the marketing spiel of licensing versus not licensing proprietary modules versus not proprietary modules. I think everybody kind of understands the basic premise of what FreeSync is and how it proposes to be a benefit, right? It is open standard, lower cost. That's kind of the key thing here. Now, what's interesting is in the writing of this story, which I actually did at NVIDIA's GPU Technology Conference. Don't tell NVIDIA. I was sitting in the press room doing it. We need to define 3 things. We have to define 3 new things, and because I'm such a risk taker, I'm going to give you terms for it. I define the VRR window as the area in which a variable refresh screen actually is functioning, right? So the window in which a 49 frames per second game results in a 49 hertz refresh rate and animation is smooth, no screen tearing, etc. And you have above and below those VRR windows, right? So what happens when your frame rate is higher than that? What happens when your frame rate is lower than that? And that is where the fundamental differences lie. Inside that FreeSync window, inside that G-SYNC VRR window, say on that BenQ panel between 40 and 144, FreeSync looks just as good as G-SYNC. It looks just as good. You get it just as smooth an animation. You get no tearing, no stutter. It all just works. That's great. Above 144 hertz, you get an option on FreeSync that you don't get on G-SYNC. On FreeSync, you get the option to disable or enable VSync. Okay? And what that means is, just like with any other monitor that has existed before, if you disable VSync, if you have VSync off, if your frame rate goes above 144 hertz, you will get screen tearing, but the minimum amount of screen latency, period, input latency, period, right? You'll get screen tearing if you're running at like 150, 160, but you'll have that option. If you turn VSync on, it will cap the frame rate at 144, and it will act just as if VSync were on, right? No big deal. With G-SYNC above that window, you only get the option of VSync on. You don't get the option today of disabling VSync if you choose to have the lowest possible input latency at the expense of screen tearing. That's a decision NVIDIA has made internally. What's maybe more interesting is what happens below the window, if you will, of VRR, is that you get on AMD FreeSync, you get the same option, right? You get to decide if you want VSync on or off. So at 40 hertz on that BenQ panel, if your frame rate goes to 38, 37, 36, 35, you have the option to enable VSync, which will be tear-free, but will introduce stutter into the animation, right? Or you can choose to disable VSync and reintroduce tearing at the without kind of the standard stutter that you'd normally see. So you get that option below. But what G-Sync does differently, and this is a graphic that I attempted to make on an airplane flying home at like 2:30 in the morning. Kim was asleep in the seat in front of me, and I had gotten bored of pounding on the chair.
And the pilot kept going up and down and up and down and up
right.
and down.
I was trying to draw a straight line here.
And it inspired you.
It did not work out. So here's what we actually know now. What G-Sync does, as this blue line represents your frame rate coming down, right? Rendered frame rate, and then this vertical axis is the refresh rate of the display. So it's 1-to-1 as you come down here, as you approach 30 or so. If your frame rate is 60, your refresh rate is 60. As your frame rate is 31, your refresh rate is 31, right? That's kind of the idea. And when you hit about 30, what happens is the screen, rather than deciding, oh, you want VSync on or off, NVIDIA goes, well, okay, here's what we're going to do. We're going to actually double the refresh rate and insert an additional copy of each frame into the sequence. So instead of going at 30 hertz, your screen is actually now refreshing at 60 hertz again. So it's doubled the refresh rate. But in every other frame, it's just duplicating a frame. The effect is you get no tearing again, but you should see no animation stutter. And people in the comments were confused, like, oh, if you're introducing duplicate frames, aren't you going to see stutter? And the idea is no, because you are still presenting the frames as quickly as the GPU gets them to you. You are just timing it and spacing it out so that in the time between frames, you are inserting another of the previous frame, right? Just to keep the screen at the correct brightness levels and to prevent tearing and any kind of flicker.
Can I throw something in here real quick?
You can toss it. Go for it.
Okay. So just if you think about like the frame repeating thing, because that was brought up a few times, TVs that pass, like if you read any TV reviews, they talk about LCD performance and different aspects. One of them is Blu-ray movie playback, because Blu-ray movies are 24 frames a second. And a 60 hertz TV or a 120 hertz TV or whatever, like if it has a mode where it can display the 24 frames per second. Now on 60 hertz TVs, what they always did was the better high-end models would have a 48 hertz refresh mode, which would then display every frame of a 24 frame per second movie twice. And the effect of that is actually to make it look completely smooth. When you were trying to display 24 frames per second on a 60 hertz monitor, you had to use 3-2 pull down, so every so many frames were doubled, and it caused screen judder. It would not be smooth. So when you can pair repeated frames up with, like in a mathematically, like the integer method, like if it goes in twice or 3 times or 4 times into the refresh rate, it looks totally smooth to your eyes. Whether that's 5 repeats into a 120 hertz panel for a 24 frame movie.
I was going to say 120 hertz is where everything nicely kind of converges.
Right. Yes, exactly. Because 60 can be doubled and 24 can be quintupled.
Ooh, fancy words. Yeah, so it's a similar idea. The point is, like, NVIDIA knows at what point a display under what refresh rate it will start to flicker, so it wants to not get below that point. So how can it do that while maintaining smoothness and a tear-free experience is to, when you get to above it, you add another frame and duplicate the refresh rate again. So as we saw in this graph, you can go from, as your frame rate gets down to 30, you double it and you start the same path. But now, as you look here, like right here, your frame rate is like 25, but your refresh rate is 50. right? So it'll go back down and it goes, oh no, we're getting down to that 30 hertz refresh rate again, right? So it simply adds in another frame into the middle of it, tripling the refresh rate. So now instead of 20, you're going to refresh at 60, right? You're going to add another. You're going to add another duplicate frame, right? So you're going to add in frame tripling. It goes down again, quadrupling, quintupling, and it kind of the pattern can go on. And the goal of it is obviously the trick is to space it out in a way that it is smooth animation, that it is intelligent enough to know that when a new frame is going to come, and it kind of separates things, and it has to account for, it's not a constant frame rate that is happening, right? You're seeing waves of frame rate, so it has to be intelligent about when it does that. And this is a rough estimate of what G-SYNC does to prevent the issue that we see with FreeSync underneath its minimum refresh rate. Now, I'm going to stop here and not try to explain it anymore on that particular part, because Alan and I did a video yesterday where we've much more eloquently and scientifically show you what is happening through the magic of analog oscilloscopes, and prove that this is what G-SYNC is doing, and prove that it is not what FreeSync is doing. And this is kind of another representation of it, although maybe a little bit busy for a graph, is that the FreeSync monitor that has like a 40 hertz minimum refresh rate, once you get below that, you're stuck at that refresh rate. You don't get to change anything like that. So you introduce tearing and potentially stutter, whereas you get this variable plot here. So there's also, so many different angles. FreeSync, in the FreeSync Reviewer's Guide, they posit that there's a performance hit for using G-SYNC, upwards of 1.5% or so, up to 2% in a couple of cases for using G-SYNC. I haven't tested that yet. Even if it's true, I don't think really a 1 to 2% performance delta for using G-SYNC is a reason to not use that technology if you're interested in VRR and you happen to have GeForce hardware. So I don't put a whole lot of weight behind it. And also it's odd that AMD sees up to 0.5% increase in their performance when enabling FreeSync, when to me, in my mind, it almost seems impossible that you could get better than VSync off performance out of a variable refresh platform. But the FreeSync setup works. The setup is easy. You plug it in, a little pop-up comes up. You enable FreeSync in a control panel. It works very similar to what you would see with the G-SYNC monitor. And I guess I'll end it with this, because we'll talk about this again next week when we show that other video and story. Is that the BenQ 40 to 144 hertz refresh panel with FreeSync is actually a really good monitor. It's fairly inexpensive. It's less expensive than the ROG Swift by maybe $150 or so. It acts perfectly well inside 40 to 144 frames per second. If you game and you never drop below 40 frames per second, you will never see the issues that we're talking about in terms of the tearing and stuttering. However, like the LG monitor, the LG 34UM67, I think, which is a 34-inch 2560 by 1080 that has a very limited refresh window of 48 to 75, is more problematic, because you only have a 26 hertz window where you actually get the benefit of variable refresh, and everything below that. And I think going below 48 frames per second is probably fairly common. If your target is like 60 to 70, I guess, because your target should be to stay inside that variable refresh window. If you go above it, you have to either deal with tearing or VSync latency, or you go below it, you deal with one or the other as well. So it's a very narrow window, and it's not a great implementation of it. I would love to see a G-SYNC variant of a 21:9, maybe 3440 by 1440 display that has, kind of the step down methodology that we just tried to detail and probably confuse people with for G-SYNC, because I think you would get rid of any of the potential issues of the bottom out. It basically, effectively, G-SYNC has no bottom minimum refresh because of the algorithm that the module is implemented, whereas FreeSync has a somewhat disconcerting bottom rate, right, that causes issues. And we'll go into it more next week, because we have the other story that's going to go up that, like, as it turns out, when your refresh rate is 40 hertz and you start to introduce tearing at low frame rates, you actually get the effect of tearing and stutter at the same time, and it's actually a little bit worse. And that transition between the two can be very disconcerting. But like I said, if you are interested in that BenQ monitor, what is it? The XL, darn it, XL2730Z, which is a 27-inch 25x14 TN FreeSync monitor. That's your best bet right now. Or the Acer as well, but we didn't actually get to test the Acer because it had a malfunction. But this is a list of, they say they have 8 monitors kind of shipping, or 11 compatible displays. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. Oh wait, there's just different size models of it. But they've got 4K up to 60 hertz, 1080p up to 144 hertz, 25x14 up to 144 hertz, and then 2 2560 by 1080s up to 75 hertz. So, and there's ghosting concerns. Go read that. There's no way to talk through that. So go check out these screenshots, but it looks like the early implementations of FreeSync may have some ghosting concerns as well. I don't know. That was a lot to talk through. What do you guys think? I'm tired of talking.
I like the idea of FreeSync. I think everybody does. Hopefully we will see other implementations that would add perhaps more features to it that would potentially get rid of some of these little issues, niggling issues that you see, but I don't know how you do that on the GPU side. But hey, you know what? NVIDIA was able to do their drivers, so they made frame delivery smoother. Remember back 2 years ago when AMD had some driver issues with like the 7950 where, Scott and you had discovered all kinds of the inconsistent frame rates, and AMD
never heard
came
of
out.
it.
What?
Never heard of it.
Yeah. And AMD came out and said, "Well, we didn't know we could get around some of these DX things." And
right, yeah.
Sure enough, they did, and who knows what software can do, because the possibilities are infinite with a programmable feature set.
It's true. And in that video that we'll hopefully get up tomorrow, we posit that they could implement the same thing that G-SYNC does in the module in their driver, but it would be a more complicated and potentially problematic implementation of it, because it has to be very aware of all of the panel intricacies, and the drivers have to be updated every time a new panel comes out, right? Whereas with the module, it's kind of driver independent, graphics card independent within reason. So
that's only logical, though.
Interesting debate.
Yeah.
But it's not fundamentally broken. That's sort of the big takeaway from this. It's not fundamentally broken. It needs some work.
I think they could fix it if they're willing to spend the time and development effort on it. I don't know. I think fundamentally it works fine. If you stay within that window, it works great. It's outside of that window where things get, troubling, I guess, on the low side especially. And, if monitor technology improves that, like, all of a sudden the minimum refresh rate is like 20 hertz without having to do any of the algorithmic doubling stuff, then you kind of fix the problem anyway. I just don't know when we'll get to that with any of these modern panels. So
we just need OLED. It'll fix everything.
I don't know if that's true.
Stay within the
We'll make OLED monitors out of graphene, and we'll fix all of humanity's problems. Oh wait.
No, quantum dots, Ken. Quantum dots.
Nobody said anything about my Jurassic Park shirt yet today. It's Jurassic World?
Yeah.
I bought a Jurassic World shirt already, guys.
Oh, nice.
Yeah.
Fanboy number 1.
All right, how quick do you think we get through the rest of this news crap?
So quick.
So quick, Ken says. NVIDIA Quadro M6000 announced. Anything interesting here?
It has ECC.
Yeah,
but
you know
only
me.
on the RAM, not on the cache. Other than that, it's a Titan X.
Yep.
So it's a Titan X with a
It's got
Quadro
grab
branding.
double precision.
It has a
Crap.
back plate. This card has a back plate.
Oh yeah, we saw it at GTC.
Oh.
It only has one 6-pin power connector.
Yeah,
too.
it only has. Yeah, that's right. It only has one 6-pin power connector.
So they're doing something. They're downclocking that
They're
thing.
a wee bit out of spec there.
Or they're just downclocking.
Hugely,
it, I
but a
guess.
wee bit.
Excuse this plane flying by.
Yeah, I was going to say, is somebody crashing into your condo?
Crop
Alan
duster.
heard me make a joke about the hand grenades, so he had his Navy friend do a flyby. So there's that. It still doesn't add any double precision capability, like any additional double precision capability. They didn't magically find some on that GPU, so ta-da. All right, next. Josh, NVIDIA is going to use Samsung for manufacturing?
What?
What? You know what?
Your dog woke
It's
up.
funny. I started to. What about my dog? He's awake.
You woke him up and
hi,
you went,
buddy.
"What?"
It's Cody.
Oh, he's so much cuter than you.
Yeah, he is. That's not hard to do. Ken's cuter than I am, and that's.
Aw. Thanks.
It's funny. I started writing a little article about why we're not going to see probably 20 nanometer GPUs and stuff. But hey, it leads into this. NVIDIA, in one of their SEC filings, mentioned that not only they're using TSMC, but they're also using Samsung. Now, Samsung came out, of course, with not very long ago a product that utilizes 14 nanometer FinFET technology on the process side. Namely, the product that will be powering the Samsung Galaxy S6.
Never heard of it.
No, and it's not going to be a very popular thing, and it's not going to be produced in the millions right off the bat. So first thing we know, this process works. Not only that, but it can do mass production of chips in the millions, which is a good thing.
So what chip do you think NVIDIA is making on this?
Nothing right now.
What do you think they're going to make on it? A GPU or a Tegra?
It depends.
Cool answer, bro.
I know. Okay, here's the deal. We're looking at let's take a look at TSMC.
Let's do.
They've got a 16 nanometer FinFET technology, but it is only aimed at low power type products because at the state it's in, it can't handle or really large designs and do it effectively.
Is that because of leakage?
No, it's not leakage. It's more a power delivery issue. So basically, you've got a large mass of transistors in a big die, and the power needed to get all of those transistors to switch in a reliable and fast manner, it scales logarithmically. How much power you got to push to that to get it to work. So if you've got a lower power design that's switching at 2.5 gigahertz, and it's a small die that is more of a CPU type application, that's not a big deal. When you get a
fine.
GPU,
I've got lots of PCIe connectors. I'm not worried about it.
Yeah, I know, and you
put
shouldn't
like
be.
4 on it, and it'll be fine.
Exactly. But if you've got one mass, okay, and that would be like 100 millimeter square die size, and so heat is not a big issue, power is not a big issue. It's fine. But once you start scaling into a bigger design, transistor density starts to kind of work against you. You got to start pushing a lot more power through it. That generates more heat. You're going to get potentially slower switching transistors because of heat and other physical issues with what you're seeing. So they're going with a 16 nanometer FinFET Plus product at the end of this year that supposedly will address a lot of these issues for a larger product that may speeds. And I mean, a GPU runs at 1 gigahertz. We're pretty happy with that. 1.2, that's fine. But the Apple A8, it's 100 millimeters square about, and it runs at 2.2 gigahertz. But it's a CPU design that has lots of stages and multiple pipelines and all that crap that allows it to go faster. But GPUs are just massively parallel. A lot of things happen in one clock, and you just can't get things to work correctly if you just start ramping up that clock speed without applying more power to it to make sure everything works effectively. And it just, pretty soon, it just careens off the scale, and you have a part that just doesn't work, and last generation stuff is outperforming it. And so that's the primary fear. But we don't know enough about Samsung's 14 nanometer FinFET. It might be a little bit better for GPUs from what I'm hearing.
Interesting.
But we don't know anything for sure. So Tegra is going to be probably one of the first things that we'll see on 14-nanometer FinFET because it is going to be a smaller device. It will be designed for low power.
Lowish
Power. I mean, we're talking 15 to 25 watts.
But Samsung's doing 20 as well, so it could just be a Tegra on 20 nanometer.
Yeah.
Because they're producing some of the AA chips. So
that's true.
Who knows?
I only have one other question really on this. Sebastian, how exciting are 10K forms?
10K forms?
The form 10K? Yeah. I also like seeing like, oh, this is an annual report pursuant of something from 1934 as part of that. What? The Securities Exchange Act of 1934.
That's a pretty important act.
Yeah, it is.
Honest.
I'm sure it hasn't needed to be updated at all.
Oh,
the
God,
last 80 years.
Yeah, scrolling through that, I was just like, oh,
T-Mobile actually
God.
fills out their forms in Morse code.
No, that was Verizon.
That was Verizon.
Oh, sorry, that was Verizon, was it?
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's actually pretty funny.
Oh.
All right, next, Corsair releases Dominator Platinum Orange Memory. Jeremy, what's special about it besides its orange color?
Well, bloody hell, this is overclocking memory. And at some point, Mori is going to put up a review of this.
He's trying. He's trying so hard.
He's actually probably going to put up a review of this on the X99 SoC board that they hit the record on.
That is also orange.
Yeah, it is also orange. But they got this DDR4 up to 4.365 gigahertz.
That's a lot of
We broke
gigahertz.
the 4 gigahertz
just
barrier.
Insane. I mean, it's barely a 900 megahertz overclock on the one hand. On the other hand, your RAM is going 4.3 gigahertz. It's rather impressive.
It's true. A 3400 megahertz out of the box result is actually pretty impressive too.
You know,
I will not lie.
there is a problem.
Oh,
It costs you about the same amount as a Titan X. These are $1,000 memory kits for 16 gigs. I know. But
Maybe you could go in
DDR4,
with a
it's
friend on
expensive.
one.
if you added this to an APU, think
I
of
was
how.
going to say, I pair it up with a $150, the 7850K APU.
You're really
Think
going to
about
have
the
And a
performance.
$100 motherboard.
You're really going to have to shove that DDR4 DIMM into that DDR3 slot.
It's
Yeah.
worth
yeah.
it. No, I think it sounds worth it.
Hey, you know,
talking
the
to
Converge
Sebastian,
does
who's already done it.
support natively
Are those,
DDR4.
is that a real rule? I mean, do you have to have a DDR4 slot?
I mean, the controller
test
itself supports it, so why even bother?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Sweet.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Give it a shot.
Let's do it.
All right, we're in. Next video planned. All right, in our final news story, MSI releases a new AM3 Plus motherboard, this time with added USB 3.1. So while they launched Intel-based USB 3.1 equipped motherboards last week, Tim, write this up for us, that they are releasing the MSI 970A SLI Crate Edition, which is hence the adorable snake on the front of the box. I guess I didn't know Crate was a snake until CES when we talked to them about
it's a
this.
snake.
Yeah.
Hey, it's a new AM3 Plus motherboard.
It is a new AM3 Plus motherboard
With modern features.
with both
And coming next month, an add-in card for DDR4 memory.
just a riser board off the PCI Express bus, I think.
Brought to you
Yeah,
by
But it'll
Josh
be
Shank.
painted black and white, so it'll fit just perfectly
Sweet.
in there. Fine.
Yeah.
For AMD platform guys, this looks like a pretty killer board though. You do have SLI and Crossfire support on there. 2 USB 3.1, no USB 3.0 according.
No. Do you know why?
What?
That chipset doesn't have it, and they didn't want to put
Because
another
it's
chip
an
on it.
SB 950, which was originally released as the SB 850 in 2012.
So they didn't want
They
to.
have
They didn't want
gotten
to add
their
both the
money.
USB 3.0 and 3.1
Wait,
controller.
Did you
Wait,
mean
no, I
you
think
didn't mean
it's
US
2010.
Yeah, I was gonna say
2010
2012 USB 3 was a thing, bro.
Yeah, no, 2010 was when the first 890 FX and SB 850 were released.
Man, that's so disappointing.
Was it AM2 Plus or was it AM2?
It was the original
Does it matter?
AM3.
Doesn't
Okay.
matter. That's a good question.
Oh.
It's
So
a valid
disappointing.
question. So, but the USB 3.1 ports are backwards compatible USB
Yeah.
3. So if you have USB 3 device, you can still get USB 3.0 performance, and then your USB 3.1 upgrade ready on that. That's interesting. That's interesting.
So, how much do we want to bet this is going to be about the only AM3 Plus motherboard that ever exists with 3.1?
No, because there's another.
Is it another
remember
MSI board?
Some weeks ago, MSI released a thing saying, hey, we've got all these new motherboards coming out with USB 3.1.
Mm-hmm.
One's based on the 970, which is this one, and another, a 990FX.
Oh, man.
A-gaming.
Oh, man.
And it's probably red.
It's going to be red and black.
Probably
This
red.
this crate motherboard is supposed to be less than $100 though.
It's a good looking motherboard.
Yeah, actually, I like the color style, and I like snakes, but not real ones.
It's got not as interesting Ethernet and audio as say like the 970 gaming, but
Sure.
it does have USB 3.1, and I think it's got an actual 8+2 power phase array.
Yeah.
Look, Josh's thoughts.
Oh, Josh's thoughts. Let's just switch
Delete.
off those.
My delete
It's all
button isn't
crap.
working.
Crap, doesn't
Delete.
know anything.
How much does that cost?
Delete.
Under $100, I think.
Less than $100.
Oh, okay.
Oh, I thought we were talking about Josh's thoughts.
Yeah, mine are worth a penny, maybe a nickel.
No.
All right, we're going to go into our hardware software picks of the week and round out the show. This is one I just found today, and I'm going to try to get a hold of it. Oh, puppy dog.
Puppy cam.
Hello, puppy cam. Now I'm going to have to bring my dogs in again.
Oh, God.
Deal with it, Ken.
Terrors.
So EVGA just started selling a GTX 980 hybrid 4 gig card, which is a hybrid air cooler water cooler. So it is very similar to who made. We saw one like
PNY.
PNY did this with the 680 or 580.
Zotac. Zotac worked with that cooling place out of Canada.
Cool.
Ace Tech.
BlackBerry.
Yeah. Ace Tech, and they had a 580 GTX 580. In fact, I've still got that cooler behind me somewhere.
Yeah.
It's very sad.
They teased that card at CES, I think, at one of the booths.
Yeah, they had it in their suite.
Oh, that's right. Yeah,
Oh,
yeah.
okay.
They had it. Yeah, they had it at their
pictures
suite.
of it. I think we did a video. They weren't calling it the hybrid then.
Oh, okay.
They were calling it like the hydrocopper, which wasn't a very good name
Because hydrocopper was already a thing that was very different, very high end.
So
this is kind of interesting. I'm curious to see like what it does for temperatures, if it does anything for overclocking, because that's been our complaint with the 980, the 780, and the 980. Really, maybe the 682 is that NVIDIA locks the voltages out, so you don't have a whole lot of like extra headroom to do overclocking. And this look based on this picture, it looks like a single thickness radiator. But I mean, it looks interesting, and it is kind of like $100 more than a reference card. So that's a little bit of a stretch there when it comes to that.
Hey, maybe it doesn't overclock any better. Maybe it's $100 more, but it will be far more inconvenient to install.
Yes.
That's true.
Oh, remember the PNY one had the CPU cooler in the same loop, and it was self-contained.
true.
Oh my God, that was so terrible to install. And we give it to people for the system build contest at QuakeCon.
They had to install it during a system build contest.
And I could hardly figure it out in the pre-build.
Yeah, the product had never existed before. We had the first 2 units in the country because they didn't even have retail packaging. So it didn't even have instructions, I don't think. And we said, hey, build this machine, otherwise you're a loser. Loser. Think about it. So that's mine. It's interesting. I wouldn't say go buy it yet. We're going to ask for one and mess around with it maybe and see what we get there. So who do we got next? Jeremy?
Kids these days, the toys that they get. I mean, when I grew up, I had to learn electronics through Rocky's Boots on my Apple IIe.
I thought you were going to say rocks.
No, well, it was hard to build an XOR gate with rocks. It's not impossible, but you can do it.
just
There's
need to
this
build
thing
an
called
end gate.
littleBits.
You just need the crystal rocks.
Yeah.
Are you not talking about the
littleBits.
Radio Shack 501 electronic set?
Yeah.
Heathkit?
They didn't have cheap Heath kits up here, but we had cheap Radio Shack kits, and I did play with a few of those. Until my mom decided that the heat sink wasn't good enough and the soldering iron was going to burn everything down.
Yeah.
I mean, you probably would have, let's be honest.
But so this is just a bunch of logic circuits that clip together with magnetics. So you've got 2 magnets on the outside, an input and output and a ground. It's got wireless stuff on it. They've actually got an Arduino language they've built specifically around these little bits. And as anyone, if you scroll down, you'll recognize the double ANDs, the NANDs, the XORs.
You just need NANDs. You can build anything out of a NAND.
Right. They've got cloud backing, so you can actually do stuff remote control, so it's accessible over the internet. But it's totally designed for if you've got a kid, a nephew or niece, a young cousin, you want to show them what you can build with electronics, or you just want to build a connected system, like a nice house. Like, say,
buy
Colleen
this for
has showed
myself
us
and
off.
say it's for my kid.
I have a box full of logic gates over there if you want it.
This looks way more colorful.
It's colorful. It's much easier to deal with, and it does work. I mean, that's the thing. You could build a smart house with this stuff if you felt like it, or get your kid to build you a smart house.
Do something useful, brat.
I don't want a kid messing with the mains to do home automation.
Oh no, you don't need mains for this.
But for home automation, you do.
No. They've
How are you going to control a light?
Switches
Here,
for it,
put
so
this
you can
fork
turn
in
lights
the
on and off
220 plug.
240, please. And what was the second link you gave me? This is the
that's
place where you
just
actually buy it.
their website, which is
How much
full of
is it?
Flash and,
How expensive is it? Let's check.
the nice kit's about $250, and you can automate your house for it. Some of the basic ones are about 150.
Base kit,
We got to
It's
go
not
smart home
ridiculously
kit.
expensive.
There you go.
synth kit. That'd be cool.
And you compare that to
Oh,
some
that's
of
cool.
the
It's cord
smart home
branded.
kits that are sold commercially, and that's actually like half price.
Arduino coding kit.
Yes, it speaks Arduino,
Click the synthesizer one.
Does it?
which they actually had Korg.
Yeah,
help
that's
them
cool.
with.
That's really cool.
Do 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 do.
Powered by a 9-volt battery?
Yeah,
No, leave
But
it
but they
alone.
literally had Korg Engineering help them with this.
That'd be a cool project. Cool little thing to build if you're a kid.
Can we control our lights with this skin?
Oh, probably.
Oh yeah.
Look,
the
it's that guy. I know that guy. He's like the king of Switzerland or something, right?
Yeah. He owns all the banks.
That looks pretty cool.
I'm so jealous of kids and their toys these days.
You can buy it now. You're allowed to. Like as an adult, that's the great thing about being an adult is you can buy whatever the hell you want. You don't have to wait for some parent to say no, bring
Yeah,
you
no,
down.
I just need the time to play
Really?
with it.
No, the bank is now my parent. It
Yeah.
can tell me no.
Yeah, that's probably true.
But
Hey,
you can
Discover
lie
card.
to the bank.
Can I have this? No.
You can lie to the bank. That's a good point. You can do that. Who do we got next? Josh, what do you got?
Me, I don't know if this may have been mentioned before, but someone posted this in our hip chat today.
Hip chat. It was Alan.
Hip chat. No, I think it was Ken, and then
Nope.
Alan said he's going to buy one.
Nope.
It's one of the first of the official IPS 144 hertz G-SYNC monitors. It's a little pricey, but you
Yep.
can get it for 10% off if you put in the code
Josh Tech.
JoshTech.com. No.
That's going to be my code
See-
for anything we pick from
Seize the idea with capitalization throughout. Seize the
Intercap.
idea.
now on. We actually have one of these sitting on the floor behind Ken.
We
Are they
plugged it in and
nice?
used it for a bit.
We did plug it in to verify refresh rate changes via oscilloscope. But
And it's really IPS?
it is really IPS. Yeah, I know it is. It looks really good.
The case, the build quality isn't as good as
Yeah,
the Swift,
it's
but
not
the
as
Swift
cool.
is really good.
Yeah, it doesn't have nearly the build quality of Swift, but the Swift was exceptional in that regard. And this Acer one is kind of built like all the other Acer laptops we've seen recently, like the 4K and the 1080p. It kind of looks the same and feels the same, which is unfortunate because it's not bad. It's just
But once you set it up and you don't touch it,
it's just like it's one of those things where if you have a desk that has a slight like wobble to it every once in a while when you touch it, and you see the monitor, it'll reverberate it. It'll make it a little bit worse than it would be if it itself is a little bit wobbly. That's kind of disappointing. I don't know if that's the case with this monitor. I'm just saying it's something to look out for. But I think this is the new best G-Sync monitor, right? It's
pretty
basically
exciting.
It's basically the ROG Swift with a better screen,
Yeah.
right? In terms of IPS quality,
Full
and it's
review
about the same
incoming.
price, right? And the ROG Swift still selling for like $750 or something like that.
I think it's a little more expensive even. I think
$770.
it hovers at like 8.
Well, didn't we just point out to Alan that it was a little bit less than that recently? Something
Maybe,
like
I
that.
don't know.
So Yeah, and it has a super cool model number of XB270HU BPRZ. Yeah. And the BPRZ is actually an important part. It's not just like burps, which is what I thought at first.
Right.
Last but not least.
Well,
I mean, maybe least. We'll see. Sebastian?
Probably least. And least expensive.
Oh, there
maybe.
you go.
Where is it? Turbo. My Turbo. We were talking about charging earlier.
Ooh,
Turbo
we were.
charging for your phone.
Okay.
Anker has a $20 18-watt turbo charger. It's Qualcomm's Quick Charge 2.0. If you have a phone with a Qualcomm chip in it, or as Ryan discovered, if you have
Samsung
any
Galaxy
modern phone
Note
that
4
supports
does
quick
it.
charge.
Yeah, yeah.
Like my phones, I have a couple of Motorola phones here. They charge up in 2 hours from 1% to 100%.
It's a substantial change when you go into the world of turbocharging a phone.
I've become far more irresponsible now with my phone.
Yeah,
I run down to 1%. Oh, whatever. Charge it for 15 minutes before I leave to go somewhere, and I've got 2-3 hours of solid use out of it, maybe more.
I have one question. Do the prongs fold in on the Anker charger?
I'm not sure because
they don't on the Motorola.
No, they don't.
This
the
one
Motorola
doesn't.
one
This one
costs
doesn't either.
$35.
I don't know why they wouldn't make the.
You think is there some
prongs foldable?
Why wouldn't they make these foldable? Is there some connection quality necessity to get 18 watts out of a charger? I can't imagine it.
No, I mean Apple. All of
like
theirs
the MacBook
fold.
chargers fold.
Yeah, I know. It does seem odd that this one doesn't do it, and neither does
my
the,
Nintendo 3DS charger right here. It folds.
What?
Well, he didn't buy a new 3DS because he wouldn't have gotten that.
Fancy.
No, I had to buy it separately, and yes, I do have a new 3DS.
You like it? Is it good?
It's really good.
Damn it. Anyway,
Higher resolution screen. It's got the XL size screen on the body of the original 3DS.
I have an XL. I have the XL with the Legend of Zelda gold Triforce in the back. So eat that.
See, it's lots and lots of screen.
What are you playing?
Okay, doesn't it?
My wife was playing Mario Party. I have
Sure, she was.
the Force. Oh, what is this?
Sure, she was.
Link Between Worlds is the new Zelda game.
Yeah, it's a good one.
It is very good. It's hard.
Yeah, if you're 7.
Oh,
Yeah, well, I don't.
Snap. I do agree. I think that's an important pick. If you have a phone capable of turbocharging, you probably already have a charger that came with it. Probably.
no.
Not necessarily.
Really?
Like this little Moto E right here.
Yeah.
Motorola doesn't include it with their phones, like the Moto X even.
No, my Moto X, I had to buy it separately. The
Just
Nexus 6 comes with one in
But
the
that's
box.
a Verizon phone. That's not a Motorola phone, really.
Nexus
This
6.
is-
Well,
It's the Nexus
you are
6.
worse than I am. I mean, you've got so much stuff with enhanced reach.
I've got some
It's
stuff with
everything.
enhanced reach for you too, Josh. I'll lift it up.
Oh, he
onto
turned the chair around. The puppy's gone.
The puppy is gone. The wife came and got the
Aw.
puppy.
Puppy cam's useless now.
It is.
Just try again. Look at it again, Ken. Let's see.
Now it's just like
It's
shoulder.
just Josh's shoulder.
This is a simulated image from that Dell webcam.
No, not enough.
That's a
nostril.
smooth shoulder you got there.
Thanks.
Nice.
It's clean.
Nice. All right, everybody. That's going to finish our episode finally today. See, I told you it'd be a short one, Ken. Right under 60 minutes, just like we promised it would be. Again, thank you, everybody, for joining us at pcper.com/live. We record the shows on Wednesdays, 10 p.m. Eastern, 7 p.m. Pacific. And if you go to pcper.com/podcast, you can find all of our previous episodes of the podcast, including videos and audio and RSS feeds if you want to subscribe to it. And don't forget to sign up for that mailing list at pcper.com/subscribe, because next Thursday we will have an Intel live stream that will include giveaways of existing SSDs and yet to be announced SSDs. Ooh, think about it. Think about it. Not too hard, but think
blown.
about it. So we'll be back next week as well. Looking forward to it. And everybody root for the Kentucky Wildcats. So I can go
I
to
don't
Final
think
Four
they
next
need
week.
our help.
Hey, root for Wyoming to the Final Four.
You won't do that. How's that bracket? How's that bracket strategy working out for you?
I'm still in second or third.
All right. Well, we'll see as these rounds progress. How much
Okay.
that Wyoming pick hurt you a little bit there. We'll see. All right. Good night, everybody. I'm Ryan Trout.
I'm Jeremy Hellstrom.
Josh Walrath.
Sebastian Peak.
Let's all yell at the TV.